Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and yet the network around them still refuses to stay buried, because this was never just a story about one predator. It was a story about proximity to power, a story about who got invited in, who stayed close, and who seemed to move through scandal with far less damage than ordinary people ever could. Years later, that same question is still echoing across countries. When elite names are tied to a case this toxic, who actually faces consequences? In Britain, that question now has a royal face. Reuters reported that Prince Andrew, King Charles's younger brother, was arrested on February 19, 2026, on suspicion of misconduct in public office, over allegations that he sent confidential government documents to Jeffrey Epstein while serving as a British trade envoy. He was released later that same day and has not been charged. Police later searched his former home as part of the investigation. That matters because Prince Andrew was already one of the most infamous elite figures linked to Epstein. His association with Epstein had already wrecked his public standing long before this latest development. But this time, the fallout moved beyond disgrace and back into formal police action. Not a conviction, not a charge, but still a visible act of state scrutiny against a man from the center of one of the most protected institutions in the world. And Britain is not the only place where the Epstein aftershocks are still hitting the elite. In France, Reuters reported that prosecutors opened two broad Epstein-linked investigations in February 2026. One focuses on human trafficking. The other covers financial crimes, including money laundering, corruption, and tax fraud. French authorities said the probes would use publicly available material along with complaints from child protection groups. Reuters also reported that the fallout reached prominent public figures, including Jack Lang, who resigned as president of the Arab World Institute after scrutiny intensified. Lang has denied wrongdoing, so when you step back, a pattern starts to emerge. In Europe, the Epstein story still appears able to trigger visible public consequences for people with titles, prestige, and social insulation. A prince can be arrested. A former minister can be pulled into the glare of investigators. Institutions can be forced to absorb the stain in public. And that leads straight to the American question. Why does the United States still feel frozen? Because in America, the public has gotten disclosure without closure. Reuters reported that the Justice Department is reviewing 5.2 million pages of Epstein-related documents, a process that has significantly slowed broader release and fueled more frustration. Lawmakers have publicly accused the DOJ of hiding names, while the department says it has been transparent and must protect victims and legally privileged material. That is not the same thing as doing nothing, but politically and psychologically it can feel very close. The public sees a dead trafficker, a convicted accomplice, a mountain of documents, and a long list of powerful associates. What it does not see is a dramatic wave of elite American figures being marched into real accountability. That gap between information and consequences is exactly where distrust grows teeth. Reuters and Ipsos found that Americans broadly believe the Epstein files show powerful people are rarely held accountable, and many believe the government is still hiding information about Epstein's clients. That is what makes the Prince Andrew story more than royal scandal. It becomes a comparison point. In Britain, the damage reached the level of arrest, even without charges. In France, the probes widened outward into trafficking and financial fraud investigations touching establishment figures. In the United States, the official answer is still review, redaction, delay, and process. Maybe that caution is legally necessary. Maybe the evidence is thinner than the public assumes. But the visual difference is impossible to ignore. Europe looks like it is willing to let the scandal touch status. America still looks like it is studying the blast radius from behind glass. And maybe that is the darkest truth here. Elite accountability does not die only through corruption. Sometimes it dies through complexity, through endless review, through legal caution so dense that the public stops being able to tell the difference between careful justice and institutional fear. In cases like Epstein's, delay can become its own kind of protection. Not because every famous name is guilty, but because time itself helps the powerful more than anyone else. That last point is analysis, but it fits the gap between the scale of public knowledge and the small number of visible consequences reflected in current reporting. So the Prince Andrew story is not just about a prince. It is about whether the Epstein network still has the power to embarrass the elite without truly breaking them. It is about whether countries are willing to do more than acknowledge ugly associations. And it is about why, in the United States, millions of pages later, the public still feels like it has seen the smoke but not the fire. Because once a scandal reaches the level of royalty, ministers, and global influence, the question is no longer whether the network touched the elite. The question is whether the elite are ever forced to pay for being touched by it.